What's up, guys? Welcome back. We're here with another episode of the single KO, the triple KO, the double KO,
double, triple,
the quadruple KO today. I'm joined by Justin and Matt as usual. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
And I'm also joined by a special guest, somebody that I think all of us have at some point come across or have visited the glorious land of which he resides. We're joined by Doc Mack of Galloping Ghost Arcade. What's up, man?
Hey, not too much. Thanks for having me.
So, we just wanted to pick your brain a bit because we do a lot of talking about fighting games on this podcast, obviously.
We mentioned Galloping Ghost like every couple of episodes. We're like, did you play that at Galloping Ghost, Max?
Yeah, if it's like Primal Rage 2 reference, much less if it's like a reference to some classic weird fighting game. I feel like Galloping Ghost Arcade always shows up in a topic of our conversation. So we're really glad to have you, Doc.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we try to have it all here. So
for anybody that's unfamiliar, Doc, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about what Galloping Ghost Arcade actually is.
Cool. So I've been playing video games forever. Started with mostly in arcades. Started in the Asteroids days. So been around for a while. Opened up a production company to make video games back in '94. And the goal was to make arcade games. And we rebooted our game in 2005 called Dark Presence. And in 2010, we had the opportunity to open up what's the Galloping Ghost Arcade, which has become the largest arcade in the world.
So you guys have been operational since you said 2010, right?
Yep.
Gotcha. So it's 13 years now. What did Galloping Ghost Arcade technically start off as? Were you in the same location?
Yeah, we were always right on Ogden Avenue in Brookfield, nice. And it was just one building. And everybody in the scene was telling us that we weren't going to be open for more than 6 months. We had known so many industry people and guys like Larry DeMar, who was he worked on like Defender and all these classic games. And the first time he came in, he was like, "Oh, you seem really passionate about this, but an arcade in today's day and age isn't going to last." And we had looked at all the arcades. There was no place to play. So we were going out with our guys, trying to find places that they could play Mortal Kombat at. And we just couldn't find any place. So we figured that it's not just us that want to play these arcade versions of the game. So we figured it would do all right.
You got to have a place for the kids to hang out, so they stay off the streets. They go into the arcades where it's nice and wholesome and safe.
That's what happened for me. Like I stayed out the streets, didn't hang out with gangs, and it was because of arcades. Right, arcades really helped a lot of upbringings for kids.
So it's funny that the stuff you guys mentioned is like the reason arcades close nowadays.
I know.
It was so hard to get any place to let us open because you're going to get kids like ditching school to go play arcade games and the gangs and mafia ties. And it was every town that we approached was like, no, we don't want an arcade in our town.
Yeah.
That's sad.
And that's like a similar mentality that I've heard from a lot of different cities and states, even in California, especially the efforts of like, the good old Super Arcade, which was a big Southern California arcade. And just getting them to even operate was a huge problem and was unfortunate because I'm pretty sure Doc and everybody here is familiar with, Family Fun Arcade in Southern California. And it was the same reason. They essentially got pushed out by like the community that had taken the shopping mall that was kind of where they've been operating for 40 years.
Yeah.
And they just got like pushed out by like all the different chains that just didn't like the group of people that were going to the arcade. And that was it. And it was over. It's like, this is such a bummer, man.
We had such a, like after about being open for 8 months, other towns started to approach us asking if we wanted to move. The same places that had rejected us were like, "Oh, you seem like it's a successful business." And it's been a high priority to help other arcades open. So we've helped over 40 arcades open. When Super Arcade was trying to open out in, I think it was Azusa, California, we flew out there and talked with their city council. And just people don't know. People don't know that you can have this awesome community, and people travel in from all over the place. So it's really good for the town. And presenting that information, like we see 80,000 people through the door a year now. And to tell a town that, it gets them excited to want that. They're like, how can we not have an arcade?
Yeah. Because we've been there, like Matt and myself have been there at the same time. I'm pretty sure, right, Matt?
Yeah, we went. I went with you guys, Yo Video Games, and we're just playing games, doing autograph signings until you guys closed. I think
it was late, and then we took there was like a bunch of people there, and everyone was going to the local restaurants and everything like that right around Galloping Ghost, so they were getting a bunch of business as a result. And funny enough, they all had arcade machines. Like we went to these places, and they all also had arcade machines.
Yeah, one of them had a Mortal Kombat 2 cabinet that Kenny spanked me on. So
that's good. That's good. So yeah, Justin, you've actually been to the Galloping Ghost, right?
I never been there.
No.
Because
cancel your trip to Hawaii.
No, you know why? Because there's a lot of times where I only come to Chicago once a year, right? Combo Breaker, UFGT.
Yeah.
But it's always like late Thursday and then leave Monday. And then usually when I enter all these games, by the time I finish for the day, it's around like 11, 12.
Yeah.
So there was never a day where I'm just like free to go actually explore Chicago. I'd never even been to Chicago, like in general, or anywhere in Illinois besides the venue and like Flo's house when he used to live there.
To be honest, book an extra day.
That story would have been pretty similar for me, because the first time I went to GGA was in 2014. And this is a year before Combo Breaker started. It was still UFGT run by Keats. Yeah. And the biggest reason I was there for a longer period of time is that we were working on the beginning of Killer Instinct Season 2. So I'd had time. So it was like, oh, let's go to Galloping Ghost, said day. And when my wife was here, and we just got to like peruse, and Doc gave us the greatest like VIP tour. He took us to like the back of the back where like all the machines that aren't exactly running yet.
Dank games are.
There was like a Power Stone 2 cabinet. I was like, this doesn't exist. Like, what is this? And he was just like, yeah, it's here. And I remember making a video about it way back in the day. I'll always appreciate that, Doc, because I was a small, like, just YouTuber guy, not doing much at the time. And all things considered, you were like, yeah, come check all this stuff out. It was the greatest tour ever.
Awesome. All right. 100%. I'm going to fulfill this promise. Before the end of this year, I'm going to make a trip to Chicago to visit Galloping Ghost Arcade.
Oh, shit.
It is said on this podcast. It's going to be public. So I will promise I will visit Chicago and go to this arcade, and definitely I will let you guys know when I'm there.
Awesome. We'll definitely make sure that it's worth your time, and show you some stuff that isn't on the floor too. So.
No, I'm looking at your website, and it's crazy because it's like, I don't know
Justin,
if it's updated.
You've never seen anything like this. You have no idea.
They have bio freaks.
But like, I see 920 games listed on the arcade, like on your game section. Is there more than 920 games, or is it like 920?
It's 920. We update that list every week. We put a new game on the floor every Monday.
Oh, nice.
And we do
every Monday a new game.
We haven't missed a Monday in over 8 years. We do the Monday mystery game. We have a big unveiling. Everybody comes out to set scores in it. And that's
so cool.
Usually it's kind of the project of the week is to pick a game and try to put it on the floor. And sometimes it's a prototype. Sometimes it's something people will know. And sometimes it's something we've just got in from Japan or wherever. So
how do you find these games, and do you have like a backlog, or like, I'm like 8 months in advance, I got 8 Mondays set up for now, from now till 8 Mondays from now?
Doing it, if we did it smart, we would have a supply, but it's literally like week to week. We have nothing
last minute.
Every time, like every stream, we're telling everybody about how we waited until Friday to even think about doing it, and now we're scrambling to get the game done. And sometimes we have to do new artwork for it, like if we have to recreate marquees or side art or control panel art. So we try to have all of that if we don't have the originals. But yeah, we've got about 160 boards in the vaults, and then it's constantly putting them on the floor, and then more come in. So we're literally right before we started, another game just got dropped off. So constantly bringing stuff in.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned, I think, is an important fact. Like, this isn't what you might see at some arcades nowadays. If you go to like a mall or something like that have these like MAME cabinets. No, like it, from what I could tell of being there, this is original hardware, still working and restored. Is that right?
Yeah, we don't have any emulation. It's all original hardware. We don't do like multi-boards, anything like that. It's got to be authentic. It's and that's a big challenge. It's 920 games to keep them all up and running. There's myself and our master tech, Doug Fox, who we get here at 6 a.m. and just start fixing stuff. So after a busy weekend, like all the light guns have to be gone through, all the drivers have to be gone through. Fortunately, like most of the other games hold up pretty well. So every once in a while, we make sure all the fighting games have new micro switches and everything. So everything's playing good.
Nice.
And there's a lot of weird things in there, like F-Zero machines that you got to find some 3 people that know how to fix that shit, right?
Yeah, EX.
We pretty much know all the hardware at this point. Like that's been one of the coolest things is to, as soon as we get it in, I go through the cabinet, make sure that I understand what the hardware is.
Yeah.
A lot of times we'll try to track down some of the rarest stuff and have it on hand in case anything needs to be repaired. But it's a never ending struggle to keep it all up and running.
What's up, dudes? Today's episode of TripleKO is sponsored by Honey. And a lot of you guys might be asking, what exactly is Honey? It is an easy way to save when shopping on your iPhone or computer. And a lot of you guys might be curious, so what do you have to do to get deals online? Honey is literally designed for that. And thanks to Honey, searching manually for coupon codes is a thing of the past. This is designed as a free shopping tool that scours the internet for promotional codes and applies the best ones immediately to your card. I've heard that our friend Matt McMuscles here has been utilizing such a wonderful provided service. How's it going, Matt?
Pretty good. Just recently, my dad kind of needs a new desk fan. And just about to just go to Amazon, just get a desk fan. And my sister actually reminded me, don't you have a thing that you talk about on your fight game show? Something coupons. And I was like, oh yeah, Honey. And she's like, you had me use that back in Christmas time when we were getting a few gifts. And I was like, yep, we should probably just use that. So she was able to use Honey to get, I think something like up to like 15% off of a really nice new fan to put on his desk. The room that he's currently in has a lot of heat. They're keeping it very warm during the winter. So
I'm glad to hear they already have Tekken 8. That's good.
Hey, bring it back to fighting games. So we use that with Honey, and we're able to save a little bit of money on there. So that was really good. And now my sister is kind of on the Honey team. So thank you, Kasha, for doing that. Thanks for using the things that I talked about in this podcast in your daily life as well. So that was really good for us.
Yep. So if any of you guys want to check it out, it literally takes a few seconds. Honey scours the internet and finds codes that'll be working as a working coupon, and you can literally watch the prices drop. And it doesn't work just on desktops, it works on your iPhone too. So if you activate it on Safari or on your phone, you can literally save on the go. So if you guys don't already have Honey, you could be straight up missing out, and by getting it, you're doing yourself a solid and always supporting the show TripleKO. So get PayPal Honey for free at joinhoney.com/TKO. That's joinhoney.com/TKO.
I wanted to ask something before when you were mentioning how you would speak to these cities, states, whoever about arcades. When you talk to them, or back in the past when you were like shopping the concept of Galloping Ghost around, were you just basically saying, oh, it's an arcade and that's it? Because when I've been there, it's an arcade, sure, and it has that feel, but it also has a museum-like quality to it, because there's like such a massive collection. Like, so when you present to outside investors or anybody representing another town, do you present it like more than an arcade, like it's a piece of history, or do you just simply go, no, it's an arcade, it's fun, it helps other local businesses, etc.?
Well, when we opened, we had no idea of that because we opened in 2010 and nobody was opening arcades in general. So The price of cabinets was nothing. Like our first 114 games, we got it for under $5,000. And it was stuff like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, Cubert, Pac, like just games that are thousands of dollars for a cabinet now. So as people started to see, hey, this is a viable business, everything changed. More collectors started getting into the scene. More places tried opening. And now the values on everything is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a lot higher.
Definitely. The approach to it with towns and stuff is very different too, because now we have 13 years of information and all the places that we've helped open. We kind of ask them to share all their information as well. So we can present numbers to show how well places do. It's basically all about sharing the information to help it keep growing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it sounds like you guys essentially built your foundation based on community, right? And literally like community support. So if you guys have each other's backs when it comes to the validation that comes to like higher ups, technically like city executives, you have all these other people that have a lot of like wonderful history that'll be able to back them up.
Absolutely. Like the town has been now so supportive that we'll have the people from the town actually contact other cities to kind of vet out and back up what we're saying, because it sounds so ludicrous that it's like, yeah, you can have an arcade and you'll see 80,000 people. Like our arcade isn't the typical arcade. Obviously, most places that are opening are much smaller, but everything can grow. So it's we never try to paint an unrealistic picture of what the arcade is going to be, but it definitely has made it to where places a lot more open to having arcades open, and they're not as afraid of gangs coming around, and you're not going to have Streets of Rage happening just because you have an arcade in your town.
That's such a weird mentality. It's like I mean, I hate to say it, but like a weird boomer mentality to think that arcades are going to bring around like a teenage populace of gangs. Like it's dude, you're going to get a bunch of 30 to 40-year-old dads with their kids.
That's what my family was telling me growing up. They're like, don't go to Chinatown Fair. Don't go to Chinatown Fair because there's all these gangs there and everything. And I'm like, there's no gangs there. All the gangs are at the parks doing graffitis and stuff, right? In the arcade, all I saw were like other kids and then also just older people just from all over like the city playing some video games. There was never really any gang activity ever happened for like the 20 years I've been at that arcade.
Well, that's very sweet and pure of you, Justin, but in Southern California, that was definitely not the case. At least in the 1990s, right? Oh. When I feel like the actual like golden era of arcades kind of was. No, man, there's arcades where some shit went down. And it's not exactly a bad thing. It's funny being a part of it when you're there. But that is not that's like 20 years ago, bro. Like that is not the case anymore. Kids do not need to go congregate at arcades and sell or do drugs or any weird shit, you know? It's like, not the case anymore.
Back in the day, Max would be in an arcade and some guy will come up to him and say, "Hey, I'll drive you to someplace. Want to come?" And Max is like, "Okay." Like that's as dicey as it gets, really.
Yeah,
even in the 90s.
Guess what? We went to some place.
To me too, yeah.
We went to a place and played Marvel 2. Like you know, we were okay. But that's the thing I wanted to ask you, Doc, is like, what is like of all the people that come in, do you guys actually get a lot of kids that show up to play fighting games and all these other games, or is it mostly like
is
families?
It just us?
It's people like us.
It's everybody. Like we've had
full spectrum.
It's kids, parents bringing their kids in. It's funny. There was right when we opened, there's a dad that was bringing his 2 sons in. And he was like 11 years old when he started coming in, and now he's in his 20s and he's still hanging out here. Like
that's cool.
That's so cool.
That's the perpetuation of it. That's the same games, Rampage and Mortal Kombat and Xenophobe and all these classics. That's what that kid has been playing for 12 years. And when he has a kid, he's going to want his kid to play those games, which is really what lends these games to being timeless. Because when I was going, my dad was taking me. So you can have, they've just stood the test of time. Like they're going to be popular forever, and they're just fun games.
I have to ask, because you mentioned Mortal Kombat, and obviously out in the Midwest, you're in Brookfield, it is, right?
Yeah, Brookfield, Illinois.
Gotcha. So the craziest thing that happened to us was that, knowing that this is where arcade culture kind of originated, right? I'd say the Midwest, around the Chicago area, is where so many companies kind of got their start as arcade industry creators, and were making machines, Midway and the like, right? This is like where arcades were born. So the craziest part to me is that I think me and Matt and video games, when we were there in like 2018, I think was the last chance we got to be there pre-COVID, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if Doc coordinated it, but we had so many people there that it was insane. We were not prepared that many people would show up to this arcade. It was so hot in there. It was nuts. And then out of nowhere, the cast of Mortal Kombat 2 shows up. And we're like, what? Like,
that's
Sonya's
crazy.
here, and Jax is here, and Kung Lao is like, what is going on? This is crazy, man. Did you coordinate that, or do those people just hang out there?
They do stop by all the time. I did let them know you were coming, but like Daniel Pacina, who was Johnny Cage, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Raiden, Carlos Pacina, they were here yesterday.
Oh my God.
So we
so
get
cool.
industry people here constantly. Jeff Lee, the guy who made Qbert, he's 5 minutes away. So it's awesome to have just industry people just stop in, because like the stuff that they made 30 years ago is still making people smile and happy. So they come in and they get to see it after all this time. They love seeing that, which is probably one of the most satisfying things as a game creator, is to see that like whatever we put out, maybe if it's good enough, if it can be on par with these games that have come out so long ago, people will still enjoy them. And you see it when guys like Brian Colin stop by and he sees Family of Three on Rampage playing, and it just makes him smile and stuff. It's an awesome thing to be able to provide that for the industry people.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Brian. He also showed up, I think, the same day that me and Max were there. And I think the Rampage movie was coming out, and I was all like smitten with Rampage again because I liked it so much as a kid. And I knew that I didn't want to bug Brian about it, but I think I was asking you, Doc, or I believe so, where I was like, oh, can you ask Brian, I want to meet him. Can I meet him? And then I think he eventually came over to me, and he was like, oh, you really like Rampage, I heard. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm really excited for it. He's like, I'm not making anything off that new movie, unfortunately. I do have a bunch of the Rampage Stretchy Buddies action figures. I was like, you do? Can I have some? I'll pay for some. And he's like, no, I ran out, sadly. I was like, oh, but it was such a thrill to meet him, because I've never, I've done lots of conventions and stuff, and he just wasn't, we weren't running in the same convention circles. Like, he didn't show up as like, hey, I'm creator of Rampage at like a RetroCon or anything. So because of Galloping Ghost, like I got to meet him and everything, and he was so sweet and humble and everything. And I was like, I have such very fond memories of playing Rampage specifically. So actually meeting the creator was a real thrill as well.
So I needed to ask, right? Obviously growing up in arcades, we used to spend quarters, 50 cents, maybe even sometimes even dollars. Would the Galloping Ghost ever function on quarters, or was it always like you pay at the door and you play for free for everything?
It's always been a free play arcade. That was one of the big things. People, when we opened, we were $15, and it was so new to people, a flat door fee to get in. And initially, a lot of people were like, I'm not spending $15 to go and play these old games. And to me, I used to, every day I went, I would get $20 in quarters, and I never had enough to play all the games I wanted to play. And I was so selective because I always wanted to finish Double Dragon and Altered Beast and Golden Axe, and new games there was such well, what if I don't like it mentality? I've wasted that quarter that I could play something that I want to play. So this changed the psychology of it. It got people to go find new favorite games. You could play all the way through Terminator 2 or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And that was such a huge thing. It was when you started presenting that, hey, remember how much it used to cost to beat The Simpsons?
Dude, yeah.
It's a brutal game.
Yeah. People kind of came around to it. And I remember as we kept growing and adding more games, we raised the rate to $20. And we were so concerned about how that was going to be like perceived by the community. And everybody was like, oh yeah, keep like just to 20. That's totally fine.
Yeah. Because you like doubled the supply of games that were available and then tripled it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been, people see that we're not just, it's not just for fiscal gain of ours. Like we keep putting all the money back in. We keep getting more buildings. We're up to, we just did our last expansion in July and we're just finishing up our next expansion. So we keep growing it and we're already talking about like right now it's the entire block. So we have no more
I was about
room
to say
that's so crazy.
The entire city will now be an arcade.
Yeah, the last time I was there, we were there in 2018. There was still like a financing firm or something that was like to the right, and I don't know, can't remember what it was, but you guys had essentially the main building, which is massive, and then I think like a secondary building on the left, and then another building on the right. So you guys got another building to the right of that?
Yeah, well, to the left or east down Ogden, there was one a Chinese restaurant that closed up, and there was a business at the back of the second and third buildings. They finally left. So it's all just keep knocking walls down and joining it all. And we've opened up several other businesses within a 6-block radius. So we've got 7 businesses total within 6 blocks.
That's so cool.
So,
it's literally like an arcade mecca of the world that's just occupying. There needs to be like neon signs and shit eventually. Like
it's
just like Vegas.
The town
it's like
is,
the Costco of arcades.
the town has been kind of against having really cool signs. Like that to me is what really stands out. Trying to make it like a Vegas type place to visit, something to take pictures of. And I'm slowly getting into working with the city. I'm on a economic development committee now for the town. So
wow,
it's having some impact in being able to pitch ideas to the town about how to make the town even better and draw more people to it.
That's so cool that this thing that essentially starts off as what is considered, essentially gang culture, which is what arcades are by a lot of consideration of committees. That's what it is, to now being this like super respected part of community development thing. I think that's so aspirational what you guys have been able to do over the years with this stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's been, for me, I'm the most fortunate person out there. I get to work with amazing people. I get to hang out with all the industry people. I get to make and play video games all day, and everything fun that I've ever wanted to do is now work. So in quotes. So it's
breaking news, Matthew. We have to stop the podcast right now.
To talk about what, Maximilian, dude?
Beards, dude.
I have a beard.
Where's Justin? Oh, he's beardless.
He does not. He's beardless and not here.
Exactly. I'm here to tell everybody that once again, Manscaped is here with their Beard Hedger Pro Kit. And from trimming a fresh beard to shave, Manscaped has essentially been helping us out in a variety of ways that now don't include the crotchal area. So I am quite happy to tell you all about it. So for anybody that wants to tame your mane, no one likes a weird, scraggly beard, which I have had historically on this podcast every once in a while.
Very much much so. I've felt it. It's scraggly.
It goes through the internet. Say goodbye to all that stubble, and you can get Manscaped's Pro Beard Kit. It's waterproof. You can shave in the shower, so you don't have to worry about hair in the sink. It's got a titanium-coated T-blade. The Pro Kit doesn't end there. They also have created 4 dermatologist-tested formulations for post-trim care. And yes, it has a beard shampoo and conditioner, and this has changed my life. I tell you what, I've been washing my hair with the same stuff that I wash my beard with, and now I'm not, and it is significantly better. So for anybody that wants to check this out, we can give you 20% off and free shipping with the code TKO at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code TKO, the beard hedger, 1 stroke, 1 guard, and 20 lengths.
I did also want to ask about, like, how did the, I guess, practice of finding unreleased games start with you guys? Because
tell us about Primal Rage 2, man.
Yeah,
how the hell?
Primal Rage 2 is the first one I heard of, but I think you might have had a game or two earlier that was unreleased, either the Beavis and Butthead game or something else, or were those around the same time period?
They were pretty close to each other. We've been so fortunate, again, knowing the industry people. Brian, for one, when we were talking with Brian, he was just like, yeah, your place is, we hosted an event with him. And he was like, nobody's going to come out to this. And he was didn't know how big of a following that he had. And he just kind of had to get out there more. And we were such a good platform to kind of showcase the industry people. And he was like, I've got these 2 prototype games. One was International Team Laser, that was a Bally Midway game that never came out. And the other was RC Squared, which was a prototype Electronic Arts was working on. Okay. And he's like, I'm just going to donate these to the arcade because neither of them worked. He's like, if you can fix them, you put them out, see if people will enjoy them.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And it was so amazing. It was getting those gifted to us from Brian Colin just meant the world to me. But yeah, it's been just this continuous thing of unheard of games. And like the Primal Rage 2 game happened when we had started Team GGA back when Mortal Kombat 9 came out. And this is before esports and everything, but we had about 7 guys on our team, got them all jerseys and stuff, and paid their airfare, their hotel, all their tournament fees. We gave them a place to train, and we paid their way to Evo. And
I remember watching those streams.
Yeah, they were unbelievable. They played as a team. They practiced as a team. It wasn't individual players. They just tried to make themselves better. And it all started with arcade tournaments, which was amazing. But I think it was after Evo, PL came out to the arcade, and a lot of other players traveled out, and Tom Brady came in, and he was like, yeah, I love what you guys are doing here. You've made this awesome community. It's exactly what the fighting game, the FGC needs. And he's like, I've got a Primal Rage 2. And if I ever part with it, I'm going to sell it to you guys. And I'm like, this is the holy grail of arcade collecting. And you just have it sitting around your house. So totally didn't believe him. And like 3 months later, he calls me up and he's like, you know what? You guys should have it. You've got the community there. It's sitting in a closet. Let me sell it to you. And he wanted next to nothing for it. He's like, it should be in a place where people can enjoy it.
This belongs in a museum.
That's literally what he was saying. And he sent it out, and it didn't power up right away. We had to work on it. And eventually we got it to fire up. All along, I'm like, there's no chance this is a Primal Rage 2 board.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it was. And a day later, we were doing a live stream, and we started talking with Chris Tang, who did a lot of the game design on it. And he was saying that of all the games that he worked on, that was kind of the only game that was the blemish on his career because it got canceled, and everything else that he had worked on, all the Street Fighter games and Marvel games, all those came out and were beloved. But there was such a bad vibe around Primal Rage 2 because it got canceled and everybody just was hating on it, although most people had never played it. Yeah. So he said he watched our stream and it was so vindicating to have high level players playing it and enjoying it and finally understanding it, because it was a lot deeper than what people were used to when it was coming out. And he said it just kind of lifted all of that cloud on him. And since then he's been inducted into the International Video Game Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow.
He allowed me to do his induction speech, was absolutely amazing. Cause
cool.
He's just such a cool guy. He's so creative and talented. And, just hearing all the stories beyond having the game, he has all the storyboards and even more than we could ever have hoped to have found. He's kind of brought it all together and it's all there for people to see at the arcade now.
I remember when Rage 2 hit the floor and it was like making news everywhere, right? All the sites were picking up on it. It was like super fascinating. Is there going to be a ROM dump? Like all this stuff was happening. And I won't forget, you guys had like a camera hooked up to the cabinet on the outside because capturing JAMA cabinet stuff was kind of difficult at the time. And there was a recording of players just playing it because there is no documentation. So it was just trying to discover special moves and supers and fatalities and do they even exist? And then there's like, I got something. Like, right. What did you do? Like people trying to frantically write stuff down because there is no game fact. There's no information on what things actually work. No tips, no nothing.
Yeah, it had made an appearance in, I think it was like 2004's. There's one other collector that has one. And he took it to a show, and I think he had it set to like he was doing $20 a play or something, from what I've heard. And then it went back in the collection.
$20. Oh my God!
That's
so one playthrough is $20.
That's what I've
just
heard.
Even to
I
try
can't verify.
like because it's some unreleased sequel to a very popular fighting game, right? It's like it'd be like saying here's Killer Instinct 3, Matt McMuscles, for
pay $20.
You know, for like the N64. Would you like to pay $20 to play it? Yes.
I would pay $20 to play that Super Nintendo version of KI2 that Tim Stamper refuses to dump.
We're gonna get him. It's gonna be
get
the
him
end
on
of
the
podcast.
Yeah,
the end of the podcast is if we get the ROM of KI2 on SNES to exist.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to ask, Doc, is you have a lot of expertise with fighting games just in general. I remember going to the arcade and trying to set a record of some kind on Third Strike, and I'm pretty sure your name at the time was #1 on the Third Strike cabinet for all-time best score. Is it still the same? Is it still your score at the top of that one?
No, I've lost the score since then. We actually bought a company called Arcade, which is a arcade location tracker and high score tracker. And I didn't want to have a conflict of interest, so I've kind of retired from scoring. So it's still most of my scores have been taken at this point, and I can't challenge them anymore because I'd rather adjudicate scores and set the rules than compete on them.
So we're saying that if we go to Galloping Ghost now, that the old GGA cards that are at the top that pretty much list like #1, #2, #3, the score places, you guys have kind of replaced that stuff?
The cards are still there. We had always done the high scores through Arcade.
Gotcha.
But they were just not, it was kind of a hobby for the owner, David Hernley. And we wanted to make it more accessible to more arcades and be bigger and more helpful and beneficial to the arcades and really push scoring more. So we bought the company from him, and we're just about to finally relaunch the site. And we've added stuff for not only high score runs, we've got stuff for the fighting game community, so you can track casual games and you can track high scores and world records per character. So like if you want to find out who has the best Akuma in Third Strike, you can see the best Akuma or Chun-Li or whoever you want. So it's a little bit deeper than a lot of the other high score sites out there.
Nice.
Man, that looks like there's a reason for me to come out there to break some records, huh?
I was gonna say, I think Justin,
get some money matches in.
Do you not hold the current world record for Marvel 2 score?
Yeah, Marvel 2's speed run.
Yeah, speed run. Okay,
but I think for score I can possibly get the highest score as well too, because I used to do that growing up in arcades. Is all before the speed run became a thing. In arcades, it's always about the score. The score was the most important thing. So I do feel pretty confident in getting the highest score for Marvel 2 and Third Strike. So that might be a task for me when I come down to GGA. That's all I'm going to say.
That would be an amazing thing.
I thought that stuff was magic as a kid. Arcade data, like I thought as a kid when I heard like, oh, the least played character in Mortal Kombat 1 was like Sonya Blade, or the most played character was so-and-so, and how arcade game creators would use that data to figure out their next rosters. Like I think something for KI, I remember hearing how Cinder and Thunder were the least popular. That's why they didn't return in KI2. And Spinal was the least popular of all, but he was so bad that Rare was like, we have to fix him. We obviously did something wrong with him. And that's why his moveset is like all motions and simple to understand things compared to his first iteration. So as a kid, I was like, how do they even know? Like, how do they look into the machine and do they see the game code? I never understood it as a kid, and I barely still understand it now, obviously. But I always thought that show was fascinating. Like actually able to back in the day look at like usage data and use it to inform your next game.
Yeah, when talking to the guys like even Ed Boon and guys like Jeff Nauman, when they're making games, so much of it would be from them going to the actual locations and just kind of listening. So many of it's so different than it is today. I was talking about with the new Street Fighter coming out, how they listen to the players so much now, whereas back then it was the creators were basically just on an island. They just were making what they thought was cool. And they would get a little bit of information from people, but there wasn't the internet like there is now. So a totally different development style.
Is there a specific arcade title that was like really hard and really painful for you guys to get?
There's been several. There's probably the Sega R360.
Like what's like the arcade horror story when it comes to acquiring like said title?
There's one that I've been dealing with right now. I've been working on getting it for about 6 years, and the seller
6 years. Jeez.
The only one longer than that was the R360, and that was about 8 years. And the guy wanted the Sega R360 came out. It was $250,000 when it came out. And it was, you sit in it and it spins all around and you're basically playing Afterburner. But if you do a barrel roll, like you physically, it puts you through a barrel roll.
It goes upside down. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay.
And the guy who had it out in California had been watching us, and initially he was just like, you're an arcade, I'll sell it to you for this amount. And as the years went by, he was like, no, you really should have one of these. And you guys are a museum for the most part. And it'll be great to have it at a place that somebody can go play it at, because there's no arcades in the US, no arcades in Japan, no arcade. There's the only other arcade that had one was in Estonia. And he's like, it'd be great to have an arcade that you could just go in and play it. So he worked with us on the price, and we unveiled it for our 10-year anniversary, that Monday Mystery, as our 10-year anniversary game. And getting it in from California was just a nightmare. The truck that brought it in didn't have a ramp, didn't have any lift gate. So we had to get our mechanic from Galloping Ghost Garage to drive down the street with the forklift, and carefully, very dangerously get it off of the truck, just balanced on the plates that were too short and everything. So
this is
a horror story.
It's an interesting topic because this is original arcade hardware, right?
Yep.
So this isn't like just lifting a CRT. And if anybody has memories of lifting a CRT, no, this is a CRT with like 2 other CRTs.
Yeah, it's like 7,000 pounds.
Yeah. And I acquired a couple of cabinets. I got my first cabinet was a CVS2 cabinet, and then I got a KI2 cabinet, and I had to move those mother fifers. And it took me and like all my friends all just hugging this machine. Come on, guys, we're gonna do it. Like it's such they're even the most basic of like a JAMA cabinet. The most convenient ones are like Astro cabinets because they just roll and they're meant to be convenient. But oh my god, dude, like arcade machines are a nightmare. And I have a Dance Dance Revolution machine, like an actual big metal ass machine, and my god, I'm never touching that. I'm never moving anything. I'm hiring people. I don't want to ever touch it with my hands. Just never again.
Yeah, because when I walked into your place for the first time and I saw it, I was like, he has a Dance Dance Revolution machine in his house. Like, how did this go through a door? Like, I assume it all fell apart. Doors had to come off. Damn. Okay.
We've actually, one of the big things why we opened up our gym and martial arts school was that the guys working here have to be able to move these cabinets. So we wanted to give them a place to go work out. So they weren't
train warriors.
That's such a good idea. Everyone's got to be in shape to move these cabs, bro.
You're like, if you want to work at GGA, you have to go to the martial arts schools and get a black belt, and then you can work at the arcade.
You have to pass the presidential fitness test.
We were talking about doing the arcade Olympics, like running with monitors and stuff. And
oh wow,
too much liability.
Kind of on Justin's last question, I did want to ask, like, is there a white whale of a game that you can talk about that like you tried to get and it's just never going to happen and you've kind of resigned, like, oh, that's never going to work out, that you can mention, not something that you're currently working on?
Well, like pretty much everything that we've been scoping up on, we've eventually found it. Right now there's 2 games, Laserdisc games that only came out in Japan, Time Gal and Revenge of the Ninja.
Yeah, I know Time Gal, ironically.
Great game, but it's basically unobtainable. Like rumors are that there's one guy that has the last cabinet of it, and there's stuff like there was a sequel to Kung Fu Master, a prototype. And I'm been trying to get the board from the guy that has it for the longest time, and they're with collectors. It's hard to convince them to sell stuff. And now with prices where they're at, like we look at what we spent when we were opening the place, and an expensive game when we started was like, oh, do we spend $500 on this cabinet?
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, well, this is the $20,000 cabinet if we're going to get it.
It's a big increase.
Yeah,
it's a very big increase.
I can relate because I had to stop collecting cabinets. Number one, they were just taking up too much space. But the first cabinet I picked up was technically CVS2, and at the time it was $600 in 2012.
Wow.
And it was at some guy's garage in the middle of like an industrial center. He's like, yeah, I'm not using it. Do you want to try it? And I'm like, sure. And just threw it in the back of a van. Now that's like such an insane deal. It's bonkers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like so many games are like that. Cuberts, when we first started, were $50. Now it's $2,500. So and it's only going up.
$50.
So I have before we get to some fighting game talk, which I definitely want to chat with you about, I have a crazy, unfathomable, not request, but like curiosity, because Justin is like, so what's the hardest game you've ever had to pick up? Like Matt's like, so what's the ones that give you the most, what are the games that give you the most problems? I'm like, so I got a question. Have you, and I'm going to ask our editor if you could look up the game title as well. Have you ever considered, Doc, getting a House of the Dead 4 special machine?
If we had room, like,
yeah,
that's the whole thing. Like, we've been very fortunate.
It's such a problem.
It is. Like, there's but how cool would it be?
Yeah, I know. If anybody that doesn't know what the House of the Dead 4 special machine is, you have to Google it, and it looks like a ride. Like it requires,
because I played House of the Dead 4, but I've never seen the cabinet.
The only time I've ever played it, it was at the what was the arcade that was on the Vegas Strip?
Oh,
it required an operator, somebody that had been trained to operate it.
What?
And it literally is a House of the Dead version, House of the Dead 4, but a special campaign, but it's a ride. And it has a moving bucket seat that two people can sit in, and it moves left and right to two different screens.
Holy shit.
It's the size of like a mini pop-up store.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's huge. It would take up number one, it would take up the space of like 16 cabinets. And it's the most cumbersome, insane thing ever. So I can't imagine there would be any reality where that makes any sense.
If we had unlimited space, that would be something cool to get. And like there's games like Galaxian 3, which was basically you need like a theater.
I remember that. Yeah. Holy shit. There was like 4 players in a theater and you'd all sit in this room, right?
Yeah. It's its own room. It's an enclosure. And if we do a second and third floor, then we can kind of get back on the crazy stuff that we'd want to get. But it's maybe for the future. I can't ever rule anything out. We got an R360, so
you just literally unlocked a core memory of mine from like a golf land or something when I was super young, and I was like, I wonder what that big game was, and it was it's literally Galaxian 3. This thing is massive, man. It's like 6 or 8 players sit in this hosting room. Oh god, yeah. These things are almost so big, like so giant, that you can't even imagine how expensive they would be to even maintain and get operational nowadays.
Oh yeah,
that went in a different direction than I thought it was going to be, because I thought Max is hyping this up and just going, can I make a special request? Can you go to Japan and get Capcom Fighting All-Stars?
Oh, man.
Ooh. Oh, my God. I'll book a flight ASAP, like first day, every day.
Yeah, we'd have to like make friends with Capcom 10 year that is there now, because they posted some pictures of them actually playing it. Doc, have you heard of the Capcom Fighting All-Stars arcade game?
I have.
So you're aware.
The gaming
we have it in the back.
The gaming vaults that we have are very deep. I will tell you that.
Okay.
Oh, really? Okay. Because there will be a momentous, joyous celebration across the planet Earth if Capcom Fighting All-Star at some point became playable in physical, non-ethereal form. that would be a joyous moment that I think everyone, because we've talked about it so much on this podcast, the unreleased Capcom game, that will be the moment where all of TripleKO can finally meet and congregate in one spot, and we'll all just go play it. We'll see what happens.
It'll be like like you were saying with the cameras of Primal Rage 2 at GGA.
Figuring out ways to
everyone's figuring out, like, oh, what's that? You figured out? How do you do that?
We'll force Justin to play Hagar. I'll play 3D Strider and 3D Nash.
And I always have to do the declaration of victory gambit that like screws me over all the time. You know, it's gonna be really bad. We're gonna play that one day. One day, God willing, we will play and we'll be like, this is awful. It is so bad.
There's a reason it was canceled.
Exactly. That's gonna be how. That's the only way it can end. You know.
And then I'm gonna just tell people it's the best game in the world. You guys all have to go and play it.
Just force everyone to go out. Man, this is the best Capcom fighting game ever.
The best.
One that's really rare that I couldn't believe, because I thought it was almost like a funny name for just marketing purposes. Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, the arcade game.
Oh, man.
On the PlayStation and Saturn, because I'd never seen that in an arcade growing up at all. I thought it was just a marketing term, like just, it's an arcade-like game. So when I went into Galloping Ghost and I actually saw that, I was like, that's real? Shut up. And it's like the most insane. I think you guys played it not too long ago on Yo Video Games for like when Batman, the movie came out. It's the craziest.
Game is just unhinged.
Yeah, it goes crazy. You get like super spirit bombs, like everything is like It doesn't make no sense.
Oh, you
That's
played
a great
that?
game.
You played it too, Justin.
I played it growing up in the PlayStation 1, and I played it thousands of times because of how crazy it is.
Wow, Justin has core memories of it. We have fake memories where I'm like, I tried it. It's crazy, man, right? No, Justin grew up with it.
Because it was so exaggerated. I'm like, I just like the supers and how everything does not make any sense with the combos, and you just see just giant red orb just come up, explode in the background. That's just amazing. That's great.
It's like what the console version of just Batman Forever, the really bad Mortal Kombat looking one, where you're just doing like the most slow paced, tedious Mortal Kombat ever. But this is like what I don't even know graphically how the arcade version is. It's like half Killer Instinct, half Mortal Kombat digitization. It's bizarre. It's ahead of its time, really.
Yeah.
When we had it on the arcade floor, I found somebody that had the board, and we built up a conversion cabinet for it. And maybe a year and a half ago, I'm just constantly scouring for games online, and somebody was selling, I want to say it was a police trainer, but it was in the Batman Forever cabinet. So we bought the original dedicated cabinet had been converted. So we bought the police trainer, and I had picked up an art kit of the original artwork years ago, and it was turned into a really cool restoration project. The only thing that we were missing was the control panel artwork, but they had that underneath the police trainer artwork. So we just heat gunned the police trainer artwork off, and there was the original dedicated control panel art. And
whoa,
now ours is an original dedicated.
That was an Easter egg right there.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask, Doc, is you, for fighting game experience, you obviously have a pretty deep connection to fighting games, it seems, because you guys have actually made your own fighting game, right?
Yeah, we're just finishing up. We've been working on a game called Dark Presence for the longest time. Literally started working on it in 94 and had dreams of it coming out on the Genesis, and rebooted in 2005, and now we're now just finishing it up. We've been spending so much time on it, and just can't wait to have it out there for everybody to play it. So and I remember trying it out. You gave me a personal demo of it back in 2014, I think it was, when I first went to the arcade, and it was like an homage to the digitized graphics era, Mortal Kombat era of fighting games. Did obviously Mortal Kombat has a pretty, and being from the Midwest, Mortal Kombat probably has a pretty big impact on you, right? Absolutely. It was definitely an homage to MK, but playing fighting games forever, it was, I wanted to have us add things that had never been done before. Like we've got left and right stances. So the move sets are different from side to side. It's got a fairly small roster. So we want players to learn and get a deeper knowledge of the actual characters instead of having these mega rosters. We went with more of a classic feel where, like MK back in the day, everybody knew every character. Street Fighter 2, everybody knew how to play everybody. So we went more with that, where we wanted the people to kind of get a deeper understanding of all the characters.
And I was going to ask, because this is important for all of us critically here. What is your top 3 favorite fighting games? And this is important. Are they all present at GGA?
Oh, definitely. We've got probably close to 90 fighting games on the floor.
Wow.
There's like some of the most obscure games. When we were doing Dark Presence, I played everything. The most obscure fighting games, we were putting time on them and learning them. And like Fallen Angels, which is
good, nice cut.
Love it. They had so many cool little things and stuff that way ahead of its time. That's one that always stands out to me that most people probably have never heard of. But top 3, I'd have to have MK1 or 2, And probably Third Strike, I would say.
Hey. It's funny because I recently started talking about this stuff in like big lists, and it's like how influential games like Mortal Kombat 2 and, you know, even Third Strike to a degree were on like the larger part of the community. And a lot of people just don't believe you. They're like, yeah, I don't know about, you know, Virtua Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat 2. Those don't seem like those were that. I'm like, buddy, if you did not exist in that time frame, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, I remember seeing comments from people when I did a video on Primal Rage 2 saying Primal Rage wasn't popular. What are you talking about? Nobody liked that game.
Yes,
And
it was.
I was like, it's pretty popular. And then when I actually did some research on it, I was like, no, it was the number one like earner in arcades for like a couple of months in 1994, which is a big deal. Like you just said, it's a big deal, but especially in 94 where there's lots of like Mortal Kombat 2 is still like fresh. Super Turbo is still fresh.
Killer Instinct, Street Fighter Alpha, like all those games were around that time.
So, yeah, it is a lot more popular than some people considered, because I guess like a lot of the home ports weren't very good. Like none of them were like amazing. Maybe the PlayStation, there was a Windows 95 port, I think that was quite good. But other than that, I think when people play it, they're like, oh, this isn't very good. And yeah, like they're kind of rough, but it was just a weird thing. I was like, no, that was a big deal, Primal Rage. Like there was going to be a Saturday morning cartoon show that I'm still really pissed never made it. There was a line of action figures, for Christ's sakes. There is no Darkstalkers action figures.
Not now.
One of the big things
not for America.
One of the big things with Primal Rage was the controls. And in Japan,
that's true.
The final thing that happened, they had Primal Rage 2.3 came out here in the US. And right before they had the game in Japan, and they did a final run of the game. Was version 2.3J, and the Japanese designers took it and they gave it Street Fighter controls. And we are the only place that has it. So we right here is at the we went on one day. It just popped up on eBay, and I haven't heard it has been dumped anywhere. Like we backed it up and everything, but it's Primal Rage with the with actual down forward button press instead of 2 buttons and release. So it's
do a pretzel.
It's how you would want Primal Rage to play, and easily the
easier
definitive
inputs,
version of it.
Yeah, because that was around the time frame where, you know, release inputs and obtuse motions, and outside of like even KOF was kind of traditional, even though it had some pretty extraneous things. Yeah. But fighting games were like trying to separate themselves from one to another, give each one some identity. And Primal Rage is a good example of that, of it not being a great example of that, right? Where it's like, we want to be different and weird, and it should be more fun, but is it? Like, and it's like, how the hell do you play this game? You know?
Yeah.
Well, that control definitely makes it more fun, and it had they launched with that, it would have been even more popular, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's why the button presses got changed to that for Primal Rage 2, like, and even standard like super move motions. I believe they got rid of that for Primal Rage 2. It has been a while since I played it, but
so speaking of fighting games, how did you guys started like I would say the FGC team of GG? I know you had Dizzy on your team. You had a lot of members, and I think they were mainly MK players related, right?
Did you 16-bit being there? Yeah.
Did you had other players from like different games, like maybe Street Fighter or Tekken or like whatever that was popular at the time when you were had so many players at GGA? Because I'd seen grand finals GGA player versus GGA player usually at like a Mortal Kombat 9 tournaments.
So most of the other games, like the Street Fighter 4 community, they wanted a team. And we were doing weeklies here, and we'd see like 50 players show up. But they weren't practicing as a team. It was one player would just steamroll everybody, and they wouldn't communicate how to get better at the game. And it's supposed to be a team thing for us. Like everybody, like Jeremiah was playing Shiva, Waffles had Smoke, 16-bit had Katana, Pete Hahn had Cyrax and Reptile, and Dizzy had Johnny Cage. Like everybody was going in a specific direction. So when they would go to tournaments, they were just competing at such a high level because they were so focused on matchups and everything. And it was like a job for them. They were coming and practicing for 8 hours a few times a week. In the rest of the fighting game community, they weren't willing to do that. They just wanted to come in and win single tournaments. And that was a lot less interesting for us because we wanted to make something bigger and have like an arcade team that would go around and they would work together. And the other games, even like we had a King of Fighters 12 and 13 cabinets. And same thing, we had some great players here, but we didn't just want to sponsor one guy that was just blowing everything up.
Of course. That makes sense. Yeah, you wanted to make sure that like everyone was kind of like teaching each other, and then the scene gets better and stronger. So then like more people would kind of like know that like, okay, there's lots of good players here instead of just one good player.
Yeah, it's a much different approach.
Yeah.
The what I wanted to ask before the team organization, the community organization that sort of happened around proper FGC, GGA, and even pre-GGA, were you finding yourself a part of like any of the early arcade, if not mid 2000s or 90s, like arcade culture fighting game communities? Did you ever like jive with any of those specifically?
Not really. Well, I was still going to arcades all throughout, but it was I wasn't connecting with any of the other players or anything. It was pretty solitary.
To be honest, it was kind of difficult. Like unless you were at Golfland or FFA, or you were at Chinatown, which Justin had the pleasure of dominating. There was very few places that were connected to the proper community at the time, because the only way that you could like keep communication was like through IRC, like through Merc and stuff like that, and that was like
I believe through Carrier Pigeon. As well.
Yeah, Carrier Pigeon. Yeah, because I think in Illinois, because I know one of the best players in the North America FGC, Flo, he lived in Illinois, and he would tell me that there wasn't many like places to play. He would mainly play on like Calera, online and everything, and stay on IRC, and he would have to travel to like California, New York, get practice. And they used to had like tournaments at Nico City. That was like the arcade that I remember growing up when I was playing Marvel 2, and at a travel, all the tournaments at that time were at the arcade, Nico City Arcade, ran by Jason Wilson. And he didn't even, from what I remember, he didn't even live there. He would fly to run the tournament at that arcade.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he moved or whatever, but I think he lived at California at one point, and then Florida at one point, and then he has his own arcade in Tennessee now. But yeah, he would fly out to Nico City to run just arcades, the arcade tournament of Midwest Championships.
And that's kind of the value behind a place like Galloping Ghost, where you have like a centralized location. This is why arcades were great for like having camaraderie and leveling up and, growing a community, was that you knew people were going to be there. It was the Cheers effect, right? Where it's like, this is where everyone knows my name and we're going to go there. We're going to have fun. I'm going to show up at this time, and the appropriate people that should be there. And it ends up just being like a local hangout gathering where everyone's like either leveling up or getting better. And the fact that you're able to like do that at a centralized location past the year 2010, because naturally all of us gang members that went to arcades in the 90s, myself included for sure, it was just not ideal. So it's great that GGA could obviously be a place that is for that, because now I think of Galloping Ghost as like a huge like Mortal Kombat community, like Renaissance location. I know Ketchup and Mustard and a lot of other players, if they're ever at Combo Breaker, they immediately all go to GGA to play Mortal Kombat stuff.
I on that same thought, Doc, being in Chicago, that Chicago area must have been like a bit of a leg up in that sense, where some of like there already was a community of like old school players that probably really love Mortal Kombat and having pride that it was like made in their home state, or the fact that you must have found some previous builds of games that were made by either Midway or Atari that because you're located like somewhat near in the Chicago area, like did you feel that this was the right place for you guys to like grow the amount that you have?
Definitely. Like if we were anywhere else, I don't think we would have had access to the industry people like we do, or the players that have such a strong connection to the games and stuff. So it's definitely been a benefit. And the industry people alone have led to so much, as far as finding unreleased games and getting more of a history to it. So it's definitely the location helped without any question about it. It really was that, and the time period that everything happened. It was, I don't know if you could line everything up better than how it happened in 2010.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. And when you're not only are the games cool, but you guys have that really awesome area where right in the front where basically the front of the store has like all the pictures and memorabilia and like things that people have donated, and that in and of itself is like I could have stared at that wall for a while. Like the games could have all been, there's no power, none of the games are working. I'm like, this wall is so cool. So even that aspect like kind of hammers home like this is a bit more than an arcade. Like it's like a special place in that regard where there's a lot of history already kind of there.
Yeah. Growing up, like, again, that has been as a game designer to have access to the industry people and to be able to share the stuff that they've made from so long ago and hear all the stories. Josh Sway did a documentary on Midway called Insert Coin. And it basically chronicled the rise of Midway games. And he shot most of that at the arcade. So I'm getting to hear all these great designers and artists and programmers tell their story. I'm sitting right down the aisle working on fixing games before we open, getting to hear all this stuff. And it was just a phenomenal thing as a creator and a player. And to be the one that gets to kind of present that to people. We were having breakfast one morning. It was me, Jeff Lee, the creator of Qbert, and Brian Colin, the Rampage guy. And I'm asking him about projects that they never put out. And Brian started telling me about a Laserdisc game that he had worked on. And it was kind of a choose your own adventure, horror themed live action game. And you'd watch a video clip and then it would ask you a question and then you answered it and then you'd either advance or get killed. And he's like, yeah, it got canceled back in 1984. And it was he had a video trailer of it that they did back then. And he showed it to me and I was like, do you still have any of this stuff? Do you have the footage? And after a bunch of talks on it, he ended up having it, and we joined forces and were able to finish that game. And now it's at various arcades across the US, and you can play it on Steam and stuff. And it's crazy though that this game, it's a really cool game that should have come out in 84 that never did. And to be able to present that to people now is it's unbelievable. It's a dream come true as a player and a designer. So,
well, if that's one thing that Galloping Ghost represents, is that entire legacy, not just between keeping cabinets up and running, right? It being a supportive community between players of the games, much less the community of people that live in Brookfield. I really got to thank you, Doc. You've created one of the greatest places on earth, and I am not joking when I say that. Justin, you're gonna have to find a time to go there. I know Justin's got to go to Hawaii like soon, and he's gonna stop by.
I told you, it's already said on the podcast in the beginning that I will be there before the end of the year. 100%. I definitely have to visit, just because the fact that the way you guys keep mentioning about how big this place is, how many games they have and there's so many like different type of really cool events. It's not just an arcade that you show up and play games, right? They have like stuff that you can actually accomplish there, right? High scores. Yes. They run tournaments. So it's really something that brings people back, because they're like, yo, it's a competition at that point. Even it might not be like an Evo competition, but it's an Evo in a certain way where like, I'm trying to be the best at this game with my points on the line. And, stuff like that really encourages people to come back, to be more competitive, to play more, to sharpen up their skills. And I think it's beautiful, because it's really hard to find that these days, especially when we live in such a era where we just play video games, talk on Discord with friends, and play video games that way, compared to what we used to grow up where the social aspect of meeting somebody at an arcade, talking smack, playing games, then going out to get food afterwards. That's something that a lot of people can't really get. Yeah. But if you are in that area, in the Chicago area, or you live there, you can get that experience at Galloping Ghost Arcade.
Yeah, absolutely. Doc, where can we find more information about you? Where can people follow you on either Twitter or YouTube or Twitch? Because you said you guys show off a game every Monday or so?
Yeah. Galloping Ghost Arcade on Twitch. Every month, we haven't missed a Monday in 8 years. So that's guaranteed crazy. Weekly, but we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and always posting stuff. So,
and I will personally attest, I'll buy the plane tickets for Justin and Matt, that if at some point in the future, when all the stars align, if Capcom Fighting All-Star is playable at some point at Galloping Ghost, my God's damn, we will be there.
We will all be there.